On the agenda today, we have one item for discussion. Before this meeting, the administration forwarded information paper ACI bracket 2025-26 number 3 to members. That paper sets out the approved changes to the directorate establishment since 2022, and also the implications of the item under discussion today for the directorate establishment. I remind members that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the item under discussion today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak on this item. And that's in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. I also draw members' attention to Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedure. That procedure governs voting on an item where a direct pecuniary interest is involved. So we come to this item. This is under the Security Bureau. It's a proposal to create from the 1st of January 2026 or the date of approval by the Finance Committee, whichever is later, of a new one-rank grade for the post of Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure, Computer Security, and one permanent directorate post / non-civil service position at D3. B. One time-limited supernumerary post of Chief Systems Manager at D1 for around 3 years up to the 31st of December 2028. And C. One time-limited supernumerary post of Chief Superintendent of Police at PPS 55 or D1 equivalent for around 3 years up to the 31st of December 2028 to lead the Office of the Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure, Computer System Security under the Security Bureau to implement the Protection of Critical Infrastructure Computer Systems Ordinance. On the 6th of May this year, the government consulted the panel on security of LegCo. Joining us for this item today are Mr. Michael Chuk, Undersecretary for Security, Ms. Vinci Chen, Principal Assistant Secretary for Security, and Mr. Francis Chen, Assistant Director of Critical Infrastructure under the Security Bureau. Now, Ms. Carmen Khan will brief members here on the gist of the panel's discussion. Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. At its meeting on the 6th of May 2025, the panel on security discussed the administration's proposal to create 3 directorate posts for implementing the Protection of Critical Infrastructure's Computer Systems Ordinance. Members noted that the Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure Computer Systems Security would lead the Office of the Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure Computer System Security, an agency to be formed on the 1st of January 2026, when the ordinance would also take effect. Critical infrastructure covered many sectors. Cyber threats were constantly evolving. The Commissioner had an important responsibility. In view of this, members were concerned about the qualifications required for this post and whether the proposed rank for this post was attractive enough to suitable talent. Members also urged the administration to speed up open recruitment where feasible to ensure that the successful candidate could fill the post when the ordinance took effect. Members also asked the administration to ensure effective collaboration between the 2 deputy commissioners in regulation and operation. The administration planned to wait till the office was operationally on the right track before reviewing the feasibility of having the commissioner take on the duties of the 2 deputy commissioners or having the non-directorate officers share such duties. The office would have an establishment of 29 non-directorate officers, of which 21 would be staffed through internal redeployment of resources, while the remaining 8 posts would be newly created permanent civil service posts. Members considered this a prudent approach. They argued, however, that the expected heavy workload of the office would warrant striking a proper balance between the principle of trimming the civil service establishment and meeting operational needs. The administration responded to the questions and concerns from members during the meeting. The panel supported the submission of this proposal to the establishment subcommittee for deliberation. Chairman, that's all for me. Thank you. Now over to the Undersecretary for Security, who will walk us through the paper. The Security Bureau's proposal is that under the Office of the Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure Computer System Security, we create 3 directorate posts to implement the ordinance. The policy goal of the ordinance is to protect the computer systems of our critical infrastructure. This is regarded against cyber attacks. Under the ordinance, there is a requirement for operators of critical infrastructure to prevent and report incidents and also respond to such incidents. To effectively implement this ordinance, starting from the 1st of January 2021, the Security Bureau will set up this Office of the Commissioner of Critical Infrastructure Computer System Security. The job of the office will be to identify critical infrastructure and designate such operators. It will also lay down the code of practice, monitor compliance, respond to cyber attacks, work on recovery, and investigate incidents. To implement this ordinance, we propose creating 3 directorate officers. 1, a permanent post, and that is the commissioner at D3, and 2 deputy commissioners, both being time-limited supernumerary posts at D1. For this office, we need 1 commissioner who will take charge of the work. This commissioner will need outstanding expertise in cybersecurity, global perspective, law enforcement experience, and strategic leadership. And this commissioner will lead the office in implementing the ordinance. The job of this commissioner has a direct bearing on Hong Kong's cybersecurity, so we need someone with the professional expertise and experience. That's why we pitched this post at D3. And this is a reasonable arrangement in terms of being a post being commensurate with the responsibilities. In the early days of the office will have to lay down a whole new framework for designating critical infrastructure and their operators. The office will also have to look at the computer systems as part of their core competencies. And then the office will have to decide on the way to regulate those operators. This is a major responsibility. That's why in the first 3 years, we propose creating 2 time-limited supernumerary posts as deputy commissioners. So 1 such deputy commissioner will be a chief systems manager from the DPO, and the other post will be filled by a chief superintendent of police. 1 will work on compliance, the other on operations. These 3 officers will be critical to implementing the ordinance. I urge members to support the proposal. Thank you. I will read out the names of the members waiting to speak. Mr. Shanghai Long, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Dennis Lo, Mr. Robert Lee, Professor Chen Wing Kwong, and Mr. Brave Chen. We start with Mr. Jesse Shang. 5 minutes. Thank you. I support this proposal. I have a couple of questions for the administration. I'm looking at paragraph 21. I just heard from the Undersecretary that we will have a deputy commissioner at D1 level to be seconded from the Digital Policy Office. So do we simply move that officer to the future office and work as the deputy commissioner? I just need some clarity. So are we saying that person on secondment will not work on the DPO's work anymore? Now, I was also a member of the Bills Committee of the Protection of Critical Infrastructures Bill. Members were concerned about the code of practice. That's because you have not just the ordinance, but also the codes of practice. The codes have to be laid down for the different operators. So we need the codes of practice first before we have operations. So we will have the code this year, and then the 1st of January 2026, we can issue the code? Or do we still have to have all these deputy commissioners in place before we work on the code of practice, and then we'll let the operators know? So how does it work? So 2 questions. Thank you. Now for the Deputy Commissioner of Compliance, this officer will be someone from the DPO. We have to create the post. and then the DPO can fill their vacancy after that officer becomes the deputy commissioner of the office. Now, there will be two kinds of codes of practice. One, generic codes of practice. For all those 8 sectors, they have to follow the generic code of practice, and we're working to launch this generic code on the 1st of January 2026. The other 2 designated authorities have just given us some feedback on the generic code in terms of its draft. Now, for specific sectors, there are designated operators. Conditions vary from one sector to the next. So we have codes of practice tailored to each sector. For those specific codes, we will talk to each sector about them. So you're saying that you start the work after January 2026. So for the generic code, we will have it by the 1st of January. As for the sector specific, rather for the office, we will set up the office on the 1st of January. So just to clarify, sector-specific operators will have to wait till the office is up and running before the talk will begin about the sector-specific code, correct? So we'll have to wait till we set up the office, the commissioner is in office, and then the commissioner will have the statutory power to specify the operators of critical infrastructure. And then the commissioner can talk to the sector-specific operators, and then they will decide and sort out which computer systems are critical. And then they will look at the features of those operators. That's when the specific sector-specific codes will be launched. So we have to wait till the commissioner is in office, and then that commissioner can will and exercise the statutory powers. Next, Dr. Lu Wai-Kwok. I support this establishment proposal. We have all kinds of critical infrastructure in the community. Critical infrastructure is inseparable from cyber systems. Security in this aspect is essential. On the 19th of March this year, this Council passed the Protection of Critical Infrastructure Computer Systems Bill. In July this year, the Security Bureau will put out the commencement notice. The plan for now is to have the ordinance commence operation on the 1st of January next year. And that's why we need this dedicated team. And the key officers for this team so the SB is trying to get the approval here to set up the team. I support this. So the commissioner of this office will be a vital position. It will be hard to find the right candidate, and we have to start thinking early about our recruitment strategy. And then this commissioner will have 2 aides, one deputy commissioner on compliance, the other on operation. Both posts are crucial. I see the organizational chart in the papers, so I can see the setup for the office. I think this structure makes sense. You need officers at different levels doing different jobs. Now, under the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, this post will be filled by someone at the rank of Chief Superintendent of Police. And then under this Deputy Commissioner, there's a small team of legal professionals. There's also a team on emergency response and drills. So all of them are police officers, sergeants, senior inspectors, etc. I have a question about the organization. This office falls under the Security Bureau. And then you have the Deputy Commissioner, who is also a CSP. So how will this structure interact with the police force? The Deputy Commissioner will still be a police officer, so how will this Deputy Commissioner interact with the police?
Under Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your support. In relation to Deputy Commissioner Operations, it is a new time-limited post. It is a supernumerary post. It is within the Security Bureau, but we will identify a Chief Superintendent of Police to fill this post. In other words, there will be a vacancy of Chief Superintendent of Police in the police force, and this post will be filled by the police force. An officer from the GSO will be seconded to the Commissioner's office. At the end of this term, this post holder will return to his or her own department. This is actually a good opportunity for the career development of the officer in question. The officer will be exposed to more opportunities in relation to superintendents, inspectors, and so on. These officers will stay within the establishment of the police force, but then the whole team will be seconded to the Commissioner's office. In relation to individual officers, likewise, there will be rotations for these officers. The arrangements stay the same. Dr. Low? All right, so for the team under the Deputy Commissioner Operations, of course, he works under the Security Bureau, but in fact, the wages will be paid by the police force. Is that true? Under Secretary, will I confirm? These officers will still be a police officer. All right. I believe the work of the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioners will last for more than 3 years. But then you are making an application on the basis of 3 years. I don't object to that. In relation to the new development of the Internet, including both positive and negative Internet developments, say attacks, I believe they will evolve. So 3 years later, we may review the structure and the establishment of the Commissioner's office. I welcome this arrangement. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chairman. When it comes to setting up the Commissioner's office, I support it. We are mindful of the international trend. Critical computer systems are crucial. The Commissioner will be a permanent post, whereas the other posts are time-limited supernumerary posts. I believe we need to continue with the work in the long run in order to ensure the stability of the critical computer systems in Hong Kong. I wonder why the administration doesn't make these 2 supernumerary posts permanent as well. That will enhance the stability of the Commissioner's office. When it comes to the organizational chart, a lot of the areas are in relation to law. Why is it under the Deputy Commissioner Operations? These matters should be related to compliance. Why isn't it under Deputy Commissioner Compliance? Now a total of 11 members of the team will be seconded from the police force. The community in Anderson, Hong Shui Kiu, Santin, we need a lot of police officers. We are running short of police officers in Hong Kong. Will this affect the manpower of the police force? How can the police force fill up the vacancies so that we can maintain law and order in Hong Kong, and at the same time, we won't burden the workload of the police force? We need to ensure the the stable operation of the police force. Undersecretary. Thank you. Why one permanent post and two supernumerary posts? Well, the Commissioner's office is a new establishment. We need to assess the workload after it commences operation. In the first 3 years, we will review the operation of the Commissioner's office. Every year, the Commissioner's office will have to submit a risk assessment report. Every 2 years, an audit report will have to be submitted by the office. In other words, after 3 years, one cycle will be completed and all the reports will have been submitted by the office. Then, we will be able to gauge the workload of the Commissioner's office. So after 3 years, we'll be able to decide how we should deal with the two supernumerary posts. When it comes to operations, indeed, we need lawyers. We need to decide whether the directions have been complied with, or we need to consider exercising the power of the commissioner to apply for warrant from the courts. We need lawyers in this respect. The two deputy commissioners will work together. In relation to the organizational chart, we have factored in manpower management. Therefore, the two teams are similar in numbers. The third question of member relates to the manpower of the police force. 11 officers will be seconded from the police force. These officers originally worked in the CSTCB, that is Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau. They work on technology crime, for instance. So when it comes to the portfolio, these officers are seconded to the Commissioner's office because they are already working on similar matters in CSTCB in relation to new developments on the Internet. The police force has been deploying resources in a flexible manner. Mr. Chow, the new Commissioner of Police, already said that he would make use of smart policing to manage the police force. Please rest assured that we will work well with the police force. Thank you. Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chairman. In relation to the 3 new posts covering 1 permanent post and 2 supernumerary posts, I support this arrangement. Obviously, the Protection of Critical Infrastructure's Computer Systems Bill was passed. That helps to enhance the stability of society. The bill also covers drawing up code of practice. I believe the Commissioner's office will have a heavy workload when it comes to handling matters in relation to attacks on critical infrastructures. A total of 32 members will be working in the Commissioner's office, 3 directorate posts and 29 non-directorate posts. They will support the work of the 3 directorate posts. I'd like to ask about the tenure of the 8 officers. In 2025 to 26, the establishment of the civil service will drop to 193,000 posts. So when it comes to the 3 directorate posts, which are underpinned by 29 non-directorate posts, how will it help to reduce the establishment of the civil service? Of course, the policy bureaus of the government have different portfolios. Can you give us more information in this regard? The deputy commissioners will be responsible for assisting the commissioner in matters in relation to critical infrastructures in CI operators. When the Commissioner's Office commences operation on the 1st of January 2026, some designated authorities will be designated. The Monetary Authority is one example. Will you consult the industry so that the Commissioner's Office will meet the needs of the industry? Under Secretary, thank you. Why don't we turn the 8 new posts to time-limited posts? 4 of these staff members are administrative clerical staff members, 1 chief executive officer, 1 executive officer, 1 personal secretary, 1 assistant clerical officer. They will have to liaise with all CI operators. There will be a lot of correspondences. We will require the submission of audit reports, audit documents, and so on. In our opinion, we believe the Commissioner's Office will require clerical support staff members. That's why we don't consider making these posts time-limited. There will also be 1 senior system manager, 1 systems manager, and 2 analysts or programmer 1s. These are professional team members. We plan to identify such professional members from the Digital Policy Office, DPO. We should make these permanent posts in order that we can attract talents more easily. In other words, we haven't considered turning these posts supernumerary. Apart from the Commissioner's Office, there will be 2 designated authorities, 1 Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the other is the Communications Authority. In the 8 sectors, are there any suitable organizations to be designated to be DAs, designated authorities? The Secretary already mentioned some criteria. At present, we consider the Hong Kong MA and the Communications Authority suitable designated authorities to help us to enforce the ordinance. Thank you. Next member, Professor Chen Wen-Kwong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the establishment proposal. The Commissioner is responsible for safeguarding the security of the critical computer systems. It is inevitable that the Commissioner will be in touch with a lot of highly sensitive information. This post holder will be either a civil servant or a non-civil servant. This post is very important. Is it more suitable to appoint a civil servant to take up the post? If we are to appoint a non-civil servant to take up this post, how can we ensure that the post holder won't disclose any information after departure from the post? How can the Commissioner's Office fare well in keeping the documents and information confidential? The Deputy Commissioners have a similar work portfolio as the Commissioner. There is duplication of duties or overlapping of duties. The Deputy Commissioner operations is very important, so I'd like to write on Mr. Dennis Leung's question. Why don't we turn the post permanent? 3 years later, you're going to apply to extend this post for yet another 3 years. You should have allowed the post holder to take up this post in a more stable manner, so we should make it a permanent post.
I thank the member for his support. So first, the point about the Commissioner. This Commissioner will exercise power. The Commissioner will come across sensitive information. The member's concern is that someone who is not a civil servant may have disciplinary issues with handling sensitive information. The Commissioner belongs to a new job function. There is no such job in the existing civil service establishment. No such function or grade exists yet. The reason we want someone who is either a civil servant or a non-civil servant to fill the job is that we want to cast a wide net in recruiting. Everyone working at this office has the duty of confidentiality under Section 57 of the Ordinance. Breach of this confidentiality duty is an offense. It's only the people working at the office who will breach this ordinance when they disclose the information. And for someone who is about to work at the office, there's vetting, especially, and that includes national security vetting. So we are confident that we can pick the appropriate people who also pass the security vetting for the office. And that will require some monitoring internally and externally. Now, on why having time-limited posts for the deputy commissioners. Indeed, some supernumerary posts have been extended time and again. But we have to bear in mind that the office will be newly created. Every task matters, but we don't have a clear picture of the workload and the complexity of the load. Without such a clear picture, creating 2 permanent posts for the deputy commissioners may not be appropriate. So we first have to assess how things go. So we have to look at the risk assessment from the operators of critical infrastructure. We'll also look at the audit report. At that point, we will have a clearer picture of the workload. And then we'll be in a better position to explain to electrical whether we decide to extend the posts or turn those posts into permanent ones, and then we will be able to present the options with justifications. Thank you. Mr. Brave Chen. Thank you. I support the proposal. So we need someone with expertise in cybersecurity for the post of commissioner. There are volatilities around the world, and we also have sanctions imposed by the US on us. So you may have someone who understands the conventional critical infrastructure. But should we also look for people who are well-versed in the sanctions imposed by the West on us? And when it comes to recruitment, let's recruit someone who can protect us from all these different threats. Now, I'm also looking at the paper. Under the Security Bureau, the establishment has been shrinking over the years. Once we bear that in mind, people will support your proposal. Since 2022, the establishment has been shrinking, so we should stress this trend. Fewer officers aside, the expenditure has also gone down. We have a huge fiscal deficit. So what we see here is that the Security Bureau is doing more with less, and we're spending less. So lower costs, more results, that will get more people to support the proposal. So 2 questions. Now, on the security of the computer systems of critical infrastructure, we have to talk to the operators to determine which systems are the core ones. Now, if such core systems are tempered with, there may be an impact on the community. We look at that impact in determining whether that infrastructure is critical and which system warrants our attention. We need a commissioner with expertise in this area. The commissioner will have to be able to talk to the operators to find out which systems are at risk. Cyber technology moves by leaps and bounds, and that is true of AI. So we need a commissioner who moves with the times. The commissioner needs to be in talks with the sector. So the commissioner will have to work with industry stakeholders and also the academia. The commissioner will need to stay up to date with the latest developments and trends in cyber threats, and that will be part of the work of the commissioner. And on the second point, I thank the member for pointing out that we have been shrinking our establishment at the Bureau. So we will meet the requirement of the Civil Service Bureau, and that is shrinking the establishment by 2% each year. And we will do our work as best as we can with the existing resources. We will spend where we must and save where we can. Thank you. Mr. Tang Fei. 2 questions for the Undersecretary. So this proposal involves a directorate level officer, and this can also be a non-civil servant. So are we saying we will be hiring non-civil servants, or are we saying that we can hire either a civil servant or a non-civil servant, and we're leaving this option open? I'm not sure based on what I see in the paper. So things can go either way. The job may go to a civil servant or a non-civil servant. That's what happens in the education sector. So with that in mind, I'm wondering whether that's the case or whether it's an either way case for this post as well. Now I'm looking at the enclosure. I'm looking at the organization chart. There will be 2 deputy commissioners, one on compliance, the other on operations. Now let's look at operations. You have senior police officers, gazetted police officers, in fact. And then you have some further distinctions here, and here are my questions. You have these senior gazetted police officers. So obviously they are law enforcement officers. Those people remain gazetted officers and law enforcement officers even when they work at this office. So my question is, so will these officers only enforce the law in relation to people associated with critical infrastructure? So when someone working on critical infrastructure fails to follow the law, and then the operations part of the office enforces the law against them, is that the case? And then you also have a situation, someone hacks into a critical infrastructure. I think a couple of days ago, a think tank just pointed out that there are so-called cyber bombs on the internet, and that's a reminder to all civilian structures, infrastructures. So when a critical infrastructure comes under a cyber attack, will the police officers under this office enforce the law against those hackers? We leave the jurisdictional issue aside. So will these officers under the office be able to enforce the law? Or will these officers enforce the law, simply enforce the law against the people working at the CI? So that's the question. Who will these police officers enforce the law against? And my last question is, do these police officers at the office enforce the law based on their own judgment, or do they have to follow the instruction of the commissioner and deputy commissioner. If the latter is true, meaning the commissioner and deputy commissioners make the decision, then the decision-making power falls to the commissioner-level officers. So there are two questions: one, civil service or non-civil servant, and also the second question is about law enforcement. So first question, civil service or non-civil servant. We want to cast the wide net. There is no existing grade like the commissioner in the civil service. When a civil servant meets the requirements and they want the job, we can recruit that person, and this person remains a civil servant. So for whatever reason, a civil servant who fills this post can revert to their old position and remain a civil servant throughout the process. Now, if we cannot find a candidate among the civil service, we can go for open recruitment. In that case, we hire this person as a non-civil servant on a contract. The commissioner falls into a very special grade. So we want flexibility in recruitment so that we find the best candidate. Now on enforcement, the police officers at the office remain police officers. There is no undermining of their law enforcement powers. So when they are off duty and they see crime happening, they can enforce the law. Now, for the main tasks of these police officers at the office, they work on emergency response and drills. That's their main tasks. These police officers also help the commissioner investigate cases of non-compliance with the commissioner's directions or directions of the office. Now, once we have established that a critical infrastructure is under cyber attack, that becomes an offense. So that matter falls beyond the office, because at that point the matter goes back to the Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau of the police force for investigation. And then in the course of the investigation, we may have to look at the risk assessment and previous audit reports of the critical infrastructure. We have to look out for, say, falsifications. That work falls under the commissioner of this office again. So for the commissioner, the work will include working with other parties, the communications authority, the monitoring authority, the police force, and the ICAC. When an investigation is live, the commissioner will have to coordinate the work under the investigation. Now, the third point, decisions of the law enforcement officers, whether the commissioner has the power to issue directions. It depends on what the officers are working on. Let's look at an example. Say the office spots non-compliance and then works with the police force on a joint investigation. And then the police force comes across a third party involved, but that third party has nothing to do with the incident. So in that case, the police force makes their own judgment. That's for the commissioner of police. But if this third party has to do with the incident involving the critical infrastructure, then the police force will work with this office. Indeed, different disciplinary services work together on cases. They worked together in the past, and that's common. Mr. Holden Chow. I support the work on protecting critical infrastructure. We need the manpower, so I support the establishment proposal. This proposal covers a number of posts. When it comes to compliance, now we have to bear in mind technology moves fast. Things move fast. The commissioner you're looking for is someone with expertise in technology. I support that. Now I have a question about the drills. for these drills, how do we go about them? Now, you may have come across something entirely new. So will the office ask the operators to work with them on new forms of drills to make sure the operators can guard against the new threats? So will it work like that? Now, say you have an operator of the critical infrastructure and they spot problems, and they may report the matter to the office. This may not warrant an investigation, but the office may have to look whether the CI is in compliance with the directions, and then you may hold a drill to make sure the system is safe. So will there be such arrangement? Thank you.
Undersecretary, thank you, member, for your support. In relation to your first question on compliance, it is indeed important to see whether the operator has a risk assessment mechanism. Is there any interfacing between the management plan and the access by the public? We take into account the computer system security management plan, and the operator will also have to conduct a computer system security audit depending on the operation or the needs of the industry. A tailor-made code of practice will be drawn up for the industry in question or for the organization in question. We will draw reference from the latest modus operandi when it comes to the attack or the latest development around the world. We will also check the practice adopted by the organization. In relation to defense drills, we will work with the DPO. Last November or December, we conducted an attack and defense drill on a massive scale. When we identify any weakness, of course, we improve upon our capability. On whether we take the initiative, the Commissioner has the power to investigate offenses. We need to protect the computer systems of critical infrastructures from any attack. When there is any issues with the computer systems, it may not be under the purview of the Commissioner. Last year, there was a blue screen incident of Microsoft. It was due to a system issue. It wasn't about any cyber attack, but in fact, it did affect a lot of people. In this case, the Commissioner will be empowered to conduct investigations. The Commissioner will have the power to talk to the operator to see whether the Commissioner will have to exercise some powers. We need to establish whether that is an attack. At least we need to identify the impact on different areas. And this is exactly one of the functions of the Commissioner. Thank you. Next, Ms. Carmen Khan. Thank you, Chairman. I was the chairperson of the Bills Committee on Protection of Critical Infrastructure's Computer Systems Bill. Of course, I definitely support this proposal. In my opinion, the Commissioner's office is very important. I think it is necessary to have permanent posts when it comes to the Commissioner and the 2 Deputy Commissioners. This will show our resolve when it comes to safeguarding the security of critical infrastructure's computer systems. I think the administration has already factored in the existing situation or the fiscal position by making the 2 deputy commissioners supernumerary posts. Regarding the 8 sectors, the commissioner's office will have to keep close liaison with, and codes of practice will also have to be formulated targeting these 8 sectors. I hope that you will turn the 2 supernumerary posts that are the 2 deputy commissioners permanent. I hope you will keep it flexible. In Section 69 of the bill or of the ordinance, the commissioner is empowered by the Secretary for Security to issue directions. The commissioner is accountable to the permanent secretary for security. After all, the commissioner is pitched at the D3 level. The commissioner will have to liaise with a lot of different stakeholders and operators. These are very high-ranking members within the organizations. So I'd like to know how the permanent secretary and the commissioner will work with the operators. We need to make sure that the commissioner is competent, but then we also need to make sure that the commissioner has good conduct. The commissioner needs to go by the principles. Undersecretary, indeed, we will keep reviewing the need to turn the supernumerary posts permanent. We have already factored in the fiscal position of the government. It is not quite ideal at present. In the coming 3 years, when we finish one whole cycle, we'll have a better picture of the workload, so we will have more information to provide to the council. At that time, whether we are going to apply to turn these supernumerary posts permanent, I hope our decisions will be backed by more data and information. In addition, the Secretary for Security has the power to issue directions. This is simply an administrative arrangement. The commissioner is responsible and has the capability for directly managing the office. The commissioner will be accountable to the permanent secretary. The commissioner is pitched at D3, and we have officers, directorate officers, ranging between D2 and D8. If a commissioner needs to draw up codes of practice for different sectors to comply with, in case of any non-compliance, the commissioner may give directions or orders. I believe most of the commissioners are pitched at D6 or above. The commissioner's office is comprised of 30-odd officers. We consider appropriate to pitch the post of the commissioner at D3 level. For example, for the captain of government flying services, we have already increased the level from D3 to D4. And that is the controller of the GFS. The persons in contact with the commissioner are professionals, very high-ranking members of the organization. The capability of the commissioner matters. The interpersonal skills also come into play. We hope to identify the most suitable person to take up this post by allowing both civil servants and non-civil servants to take up this post. So we may not attract the commissioner with the D3 level. We attract the suitable person with a sense of mission. We require all civil servants to have good conduct. So all people need to pass all vetting, including national security vetting. Thank you. Dr. Tan Yueheng. The implementation of the Protection of Critical Infrastructure's Computer Systems Bill is very important. That's why we need standard personnel and establishment to ensure the effective implementation of the bill. I'd like to follow up on 2 points. There are a few commissioners, say the DPO, Commissioner for Sports. There are other commissioners in the government. Are these commissioners supported by deputy commissioners? If no, I'd like the administration to tell us why it is important to set up the post of deputy commissioners to support the commissioner. I support this establishment proposal, but I hope that the administration will give me a clear explanation. So in the future, when other commissioners, when we set up other commissioners, we will have a more solid basis to decide whether we need to set up the post of deputy commissioners. So there won't be a standard practice to have deputy commissioners whenever we have a commissioner's office. We need to take into account the actual needs of the commissioner's office. That is my first question. Regarding my second question, this team comprises 32 officers, 1 commissioner, 2 deputy commissioners, and 29 non-directorate posts. 11 police officers, 12 computer system professionals, and 17 non-computer system professionals. Some are clerical staff members. This commissioner's office is responsible for critical infrastructure's computer systems. So the computer system professionals will work in the front line, supported by non-computer system professionals. In other words, there are a total of 12 computer system professionals supported by 17 non-computer system professionals. How can we ensure the 12 computer system professionals will be able to respond to cyber attacks that are going to crop up in the future? The demand is going to be huge in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Dr. Tan for his support. First, the commissioner. The commissioner will have statutory powers. So that's where this commissioner is different from other commissioners. Say you have the commissioner for youth affairs or the commissioner for sports. Those commissioners have their respective areas. Before this commissioner here, this is about an office set up under an ordinance with statutory powers for this commissioner. So this is where this commissioner is distinct from the other commissioners. Now, for this office, apart from the 4 clerical support officers, 1 personal secretary, 1 chief executive officer, 1 executive officer, and 1 assistant clerical officer, And apart from those two legal professionals, for these small group of people, we do not require any specialist knowledge in computer systems. The two deputy commissioners need to have their own expertise. As for the systems officers, those are people from the DPO. They have expertise in cyber affairs. And for the police officers, those officers are from the CSTCB, from the police force. All such officers have an expertise in computer crime, cyber crime, or some kind of expertise in computer matters. So, apart from the clerical support staff and the two lawyers, everyone else has expertise in cyber matters. Ms. Eunice Young. I support this establishment proposal. So the first task for the office after it's established is to identify and specify critical infrastructure and their operators, and also monitor those operators in performing their duties. That's part of the ordinance, and this will cover many industries: finance, energy, communications, etc. Information systems are complex. So the government wants flexibility in hiring. Either a civil servant or a non-civil servant will do. You just want the best candidate for this important post. The commissioner and the deputy commissioners will need industry knowledge, coordination skills, and this selection process also has to, and selection as in identifying critical infrastructure will need to be a credible process. And what challenges does the government anticipate? You want to put operators on the list, and that list will not be made public. So we have a year's time because the office will be set up on January 1st. So in terms of the timetable, how many operators will be involved and how many controversial cases do you expect? Say maybe some cases will involve a court process. And how do you cope with that? Now my concern lies with the operators. Identifying the operators will be a major challenge given the many industries involved. So how will the commissioner and the two deputy commissioners identify the CIs and designate those operators? Indeed, there are 8 sectors, and that covers many operators. Not all operators will be designated as operators of critical infrastructure. There are 2 conditions to be met. So simply put, in everyday language, it's about the operator's share of the industry and whether it's an essential service the operator provides. So how bad would it be if we're denied that service? So some industry operators know deep inside they will be included as critical infrastructure operators, because we have been in touch with those sectors. Over time, we have found out about their position and we have told them about our plan for this bill. We have not had any major opposition during industry consultations, and some operators know they will be designated as critical infrastructure operators and they already meet all our requirements. In the past, those operators did not have to submit their audit reports. In the future, they will have to submit their audit reports to us. And it would be hard to believe such big organizations do not have their own risk assessment or audit procedures. Now, for the first stage, CI operators to be designated, we do not foresee any major controversies. The only issue is number. There will be 8 sectors, so that will be 100 operators to be involved. So once this office is set up on January 1st, we want to cover the first set of designated CI operators within the first 6 months. And then we will work to issue the sector-specific or organization-specific code of practice. And then we will get to the other two statutory requirements, risk assessment report and the audit report. In terms of the workload, the first half of the year will see much of the work because that involves intensive efforts to talk to those CI operators. We all have to be on the same page on which part of the system will be covered. Not every part of the system will be covered. Say you have a CI operator. You have a system just for staff welfare, say payroll for staff or travel allowances, long service merits, long service allowances. Systems with little to do with the core system will not be covered by our regime. So 2 members are waiting to speak. Let's see if members have further questions. If not, we will proceed to a vote after getting to those 2 members. Other members in the complex, please get ready. So we'll finish this round of questioning with the 2 members and then I'll draw the line. Mr. Gary Chen. I support this establishment proposal. But as the Undersecretary said, we have to tighten the belt. So we have to save where we can. How much would it cost to run the office for a year? You will have 32 officers at the office. How much will the staff cost as a share of the office expenditure for the 32 officers? How many posts can be filled with the existing officers so officers we can move from other departments? What's the share of the staff cost of the 32 officers as a part of the overall expenditure? And where will we have the office? Will this office be accommodated at existing vacant government offices? Doing that will mean we can keep our country safe without leading to a massive increase in government expenditure. So 2 questions. So first, on the site of the office. We want to put this office in the former revenue towers. So we have found the office space, but that's only a temporary site. As for the long-term plan, we are talking to the government property agency to find a suitable spot for the office. Now, we don't want to spend too much money. We don't need anything fancy. Now, on the annual expenditure of the office, our projection is $16 million on rents, utilities, computer system maintenance, etc. As for the staff cost, we will need $44 million. So overall, you will need $61 million in annual expenditure, and that covers staff cost and utilities, everything. Now, the additional staff cost will be roughly $20 million. So out of the $40 million on staff cost, half of that will be from existing resources. The extra cost will be $20 million. Chairman, other departments should learn from this office. A new office, 32 officers, most of them existing staff, and we're using existing vacant government offices. And you're spending just $60 million a year. Only $20 million from that is extra. There are other departments creating new posts, finding new places for the office. They should learn from the Security Bureau on achieving savings. Thank you. We agree. And we also want to make that point as well. The Security Bureau is doing a fine job on this. Last one, Dr. So Chang-Wing. Thank you, Chairman. So we will need a very competent commissioner. So this commissioner will need outstanding cybersecurity expertise international perspective, enforcement, experience, and also strategic leadership. They will have to be well versed in cybersecurity standards and CR operations, in sync with the latest international threat, and also capable of coordinating across departments, creating an efficient notification mechanism, and also a high degree of political sensitivity and communication skills. So it's good to adopt such standards. And when someone checks all the boxes, they will be an excellent candidate. But it will be hard to find someone on the market when you look for someone like this. So I wonder, within the government, has the government found a candidate like this? Because you need someone who's the whole package. Now, for some skills, you can find them among the directorate officers in the security bureau or in the police force. Now, it's fine if you already have found someone who's a good fit. But if you cannot find someone who checks all the boxes, which qualities will be given greater weighting? Professional skills or political sensitivity or enforcement capability? Which one will be prioritized? You will need to find someone fast. I give my full support to these requirements and support this proposal. Thank you. Undersecretary. First, I thank Dr. So for his reminder. This is opposed at D3. The pay and fringe benefits may not be the most competitive on the market, but this post will be of vital importance to the security of our critical infrastructure. We want someone with a sense of mission. So we're looking for someone with law enforcement experience. That's why we have been looking for someone in the discipline services. This can be a serving or retired officers. We will look for someone who checks all the boxes when it comes to personal integrity, professional knowledge, and also patriotism. We will look out for someone with all those qualities. Thank you. If members have no other questions, I now put this item to a vote. Will members in favor of the item under paper AC number 2025-26, number 5, please raise their hands. Those against the proposal, please raise their hands. I think a majority of members voted in favor of this proposal, so this proposal is endorsed. Now we vote on whether we recommend further discussion of EC number 2025-26, number 5 by the Finance Committee. So this is whether the FC should further discuss this item now in accordance with paragraph 40A of the Establishment Subcommittee procedure. I now put the item to a vote. This subcommittee recommends further discussion of paper AC 2025-26, number 5, which is an item endorsed by this subcommittee by the Finance Committee. If we pass this motion, that means we do recommend further discussion by the FC of this item. If we vote down, if we negative this motion, that means this subcommittee does not recommend further discussion of this paper by the FC. Members in favor of the motion, please raise their hands. Members who are against, please raise their hands. Thank you. I think a majority of members voted against this motion. So this motion is negative. The Establishment Subcommittee does not recommend further discussion of paper AC 2025-26 number 5 by the FC. So that concludes the meeting today. Our next meeting will be held on the 11th of June. That's Wednesday from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Thank you.